right? Where they start, they have to find out and then start in September. So after the infant season is done, and all the classes I'm teaching is done, my life's going to be completely
That's good. Wait, so when are you guys going on the trip?
July 18th to August 8th.
Oh wow, that's a long trip. That's great. That's cool. You won't?
You're free to visit.
Who's going to take care of your garden?
Our housekeeper and
If you want to harvest, you can take care of it.
Well, I have to find someone to. I'll trade you if you wanna. No, I was gonna actually ask a Hebrew school kid if they wanna make a few bucks to water my garden while we're in Israel.
David's not asking you to water. He's asking you to
Pluck things.
vegetables.
Doesn't it need to be watered too? I mean,
Well, actually, it has sprinklers.
No, you won't do it.
Has sprinklers.
I've got to find someone to water my garden. By the way, do you need lettuce? Does anyone need lettuce? Come get kale. I mean, the amount that I have is out of control.
We have a lot of kale.
So what are you going to do with it? Why don't you?
Okay, here's what I mean.
You
Here's
can
what I
make
mean.
kale soup and freeze it.
I had the amount of arugula, I made pesto for a year. Really. And I cut into cubes, I did that. The kale, out of arugula. The kale, I should freeze into soups. I mean, I put it in everything.
Take the kale, chop it up, put it in a bag, and put some seasoning in it,
Yeah.
and a little bit of olive oil, and you just put it in the sheet pan.
Oh, the chips? Yeah, the chips are good. That does use a lot of kale.
You can't do like a barrel.
But the amount of kale that I
It's
have,
a barrel.
John, the amount of kale that I have,
Yeah, but it's
please,
short, like,
come take
it's
kale.
always like, it's like spinach.
It does cook
Or
down.
no,
It does
mushroom,
cook down.
like you cook it, it cooks down.
It
from
does
the
cook
surface
down.
side.
It does cook down.
I might stop by it afterwards and grab some.
Stop, please.
I might eat salad.
Anytime. All right. We're on page 13. Or page 45, I think. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu Nile Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 15 or 48. Lechu niranina l'Adonai Nariya l'zuri sheinu Nekadim afanav betoda Bizmiro Nariya lo Kiel Gadol. Arba'im shana god bedor Valmaram toye levavem Vem lo yadu derachai Asher nishbati be'abim Yavon el menuchati Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, gol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai. Adonai Baruch Hu Shemo Masru Meyom Leyom Yeshuato Sabru Vagoyim Kevodo Bechol Amim Nifleotav King Adol Adonai Omul Almeon Norahu Al Kol Elohi Hay 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 Kol Elohi Amim Elilim Va Adonai Shamayim Asa Hod V'Hadar Lefanav U'Tiferet B'Mikdasho Havul Adonai Mishpechot Amim Havul Adonai Kavod V'Oz Havul Adonai Kevod Shemo Se'u Mincha Uvahu Be'Chazrota Hay 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 Ishtachavu L'Adonai V'Hadrat Kodesh Chilu Mipanav Kol HaHaretz Imru V'Goyim Adonai Malach Aftikon Tevel Mahal Timot Yadin Amim B'mei Sharim Yislechu Hashamayim B'Tagel Haaretz Yiram Hayam Hum Lo Yalo Sadai V'chol Asher Bo Hay 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 Az Yiranenu Kol Atzeya Lifnei Adonai Ki Hiva Lishmot HaHaretz Yishmot Tevel B'Tzedek Ve'amim B'Emunato Ay 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 Hay Ay 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 17 or 51 Adonai Malach Or Zaru Al Tzadik Ol Yisrael Simcha Simcha Tzadikim Badonai Be'odu Lezecher Godsho Mizmor Shiru L'Adonai Shir Chadash Ki Niflaot Asa Hoshia Lo Yemino Hozro Akosho Hodia Adonai Yeshuato Lehenei Hagoyim Gilatzin Kato Zachar Chasno V'Emunato Lebeit Yisrael Rahu Kol Afsei Haaretz Het Yeshuat Eloheinu Hariyu L'Adonai Kol HaHaretz Pitzchu V'Ranenu V'Zameru Zamru L'Adonai V'Chinor V'Chinor V'Kol Zimra V'Chatzos Rod V'Kol Shofar Hariyu Lifnei HaMelech Adonai Yiram Hayam Uleho Tevel V'Yoshveva Neharoyim Chauchaf Yachar Arim Yiranenu Lifnei Adonai Iva Lishbot HaHaretz Yishbot Tevel Tzedek Ve'amim B'mei Sharim Adonai Malach Yergezu Amim 19 or 53 Moshe ve'Aaron Mekohanav Ushmuel Shemo Korim El Adonai Ve'u Yanem B'amoranan Yedaber Aleim Shamiru Edotav V'chol Natan Lamo Adonai Eloheinu Adonidam El Nosei Aitalaem Enogim Alalilodam Ramimu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishachavu le'ar kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Page 20 or 54, please rise. Mizmor LeDavid Havul Adonai B'nei Elohim Havul Adonai Kavod Vaos Hay Havul Adonai Kevod Shema Yishachavul Adonai V'Hadrat Kodesh Kol Adonai Alamayim El Kavod Yirim Adonai Alamayim Rabim Kol Adonai Ba'koach Kol Adonai Behadar Kol Adonai Shober Arazim Vaishaber Adonai Et Arzei Halvanon Vayarkidem Kemo Egel Levanon Vesiryon Kemo Ben Reimim Hay Kol Adonai Chotzev Lavotesh Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh Kol Adonai Yecholei Laila Lo Devayechesof Uvechalo Kolo Omer Kavod Ay Adonai Lama Bun Yashava Yeshev Adonai Melech Leolam Adonai Ozalei Amo Yiten Adonai Yivarech Edamo Vashalom Ay You may be seated. Hanna bekoach bekoach gedulad yemincha tatir tzerura kabel rinat amicha sagabenu tareinu nora Hanna bekoach gedulad yemincha tatir tzerura kabel rinat amicha sagabenu tareinu nora Page 21 or 26. Lecha dodi ligrad galai ay 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmi'anu Elam yuchad ay 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 lecha dodi ligrad gala b'nei Shabbat Kabbalat Adonai echad u'shemo echad Adonai echad u'shemo echad oh l'shem u'tiferet ve'letehila ay 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 lecha dodi ligrad gala b'nei Shabbat Kabbalat ligrad Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ligrad Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mikor habiracha ay 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 lecha dodi ligrad gala b'nei Shabbat Kabbalat mirash mikedem nezucha mirash mikedem nezucha sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila ay 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 lecha dodi ligrad gala b'nei Shabbat Kabbalat Migdash melech himlucha kumitehi midocha hafecha ay ay rav lach shevet v'yemek habacha ve'hu yachamol alayechem la lecha dodi ligrad gala penei Shabbat Kabbalat ay ay lecha dodi ligrad gala penei Shabbat Kabbalat hinarim e'afar kumi liv shivig deni badechami al yad ben ishai beit halachmi korva el nafshi ge'ala lecha dodi likrat gala penei Shabbat Kabbalat ay ay lecha dodi ligrad gala penei Shabbat Kabbalat hidoreri ki bahorechu miuri uri shir daveri kevod Adonai alayich nigla lecha lecha dodi likrakala b'nei Shabbat nekabela lo teboshi belo tikalmi mati shochachi umatemi bach yechesu anye ahami v'nivne ta'ira tilai lecha dodi hay likrakala b'nei Shabbat nekabela v'hayulim shisa shosayik v'rachaku kol mivalayik yasis alayik Elohayik imsos chatan al kala lecha dodi hayadadadai likrakala hayadadadai b'nei Shabbat nekabela yamin usmol tifrosi v'yed Adonai ta'arisi al yarish ben parti v'nismecha v'nagila lecha dodi hayamara likrakala b'nei Shabbat nekabela boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha hotzahala tochemune hamsegula v'ichala lecha dodi hayadadadada likrakala hayamara b'nei Shabbat nekabela Verse 23 or 59. You may be seated. Mizmor shir leyom HaShabbat. Magalu Masechaya Me'olam Kumach Shivotecha Ho'aya Magalu Masechaya Me'olam Kumach Shivotecha. Each house in the Oh, Yenubun Beseva, Mesheni Veranimiu, Leagihi Ashar Adonai, Suri Biloav Latabo, Adonai Malach, Yeud Lavesh, Lavesh Shalom. Edo Techanenu Me'on Leveit Chana V'Kodesh Adonai Leorech Yamin. This week we observe the Yartzeichen of Clara Nenner, great-grandmother of Colby Hopper, Enid Serebransky, mother of Joel Serebransky, Theodore Smith, husband of Doris Pat Smith, Mildred B. Drostov, mother of Andrea Priggett, Dr. Rose Koblenz Goldberg, mother of Eleanor Dreyfus and a founding member of the PJC, Estelle Lewitz, mother-in-law of Morris Stamfer, Benjamin Siegel, father of Ephraim Siegel, Sidney Weber, a founding member of the PJC, Vladimir Schusterman, father of Yelena Spitzer, and also Mary Furgang and Richard Kessler, who are memorialized on our board, May their memories and the memories of all of those whom we recall be blessings. Mourner's Kaddish is page 24 or page 62. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'gala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Could I get a volunteer to pass out materials? Good Shabbos. It's so nice to see what is comparatively a nice crowd for us on Friday night lately. So it's so nice to see all of you. And if you're joining us online, it's nice to imagine seeing you as well. Good Shabbos. It's nice to be back. One thing about Jewish culture and Jewish thought is that it doesn't produce the kinds of visual arts and visual midrashim that some of our brother and sister religions produce so lavishly. There aren't Jewish versions of the Sistine Chapel, really, at least not in that form. Which is one of the reasons why whenever there is an occasion to share a visual midrash, I like to do it, because they're somewhat few and far between in Jewish culture. And this is, I think, a very interesting one about Shavuot. And we can talk about it for a second. I'm going to share a few thoughts about it in a second. But first I want to orient you a little bit to what it is. So it's from a manuscript. It's from an illuminated machzor or prayer book for Shavuot from the 1300s. And it's a very grainy image for which I apologize. I couldn't find a better one, but I'll share a little bit of what it is. So the Hebrew word there is aron, which means what? Anyone? Ark, right? The Hebrew means aron, right? And the scene, can you tell what the scene is? It's a little grainy. Does anyone have a sense of what the scene is? Yeah, if you hold it here, if you look at it from far away, it's like the magic eye.
Wow.
It looks a little bit better, maybe. What's that? So there is a reference to the fruits. I think there is a reference to the fruits. Yes, I think there is. Here, maybe grapes. But what else is going on in the image? They have little Jew hats. That's right. They do have the medieval Jew hats. Yeah, a mountain. What mountain could that be? Probably Sinai. Whenever there's a mountain, it's Sinai. So the image is interesting, and I'll orient you a little bit to it in a second. And the images, I will just say, from our modern perspective, at least one in a synagogue like ours is probably somewhat problematic from a gender perspective. But what's going on in the image is Moshe is holding is as the Torah up here. This is Moshe, and the men who are wearing Maryuk, the little Jew hats, are separate from the women. So there's a see this vine right here? It goes up, it separates the aleph of Aaron from the last letters, right? So that vine, these are the women, these are the men, which, remember, that's something that the Torah says happens at Revelation. The men and the women are supposed to separate, and the men are around the mountain, right? That's how they imagine it. And the men are looking straight up at Moshe. And Aaron is right here, and the men are looking up at Moshe, who's looking up at the Torah, who's receiving it from God. The women, and it's very hard to see in this image, but the women, there's a couple of interesting things about the women. The first is they are all wearing animal masks. So it's very hard to see. The first woman you can see closest to the vine is actually the one wearing a bird mask. And you can see the nose is pointed. And if you look at a nice version of this image, you'll see that they're all wearing different animal masks.
Wow.
Yeah, it is wow. It is interesting. And rather than looking up at Moshe, the women are looking straight up at the aleph. The women are looking straight up at the aleph. Now, I think they're trumpet or chatzot. I don't know. There's some kind of there's some kind of trumpet. Yeah, some kind of trumpet. Right, the sound of the right. It's an illustration of Sinai. So I guess before I share a few thoughts, I mean, what do you make of the fact that the of this depiction? The men
have that in their face? It looks like it's pretty.
No, the men, and it's hard to tell in the picture. You have to take my word for it. The men have human faces. They're not. It's clear when you look at the image that the women are very clearly depicted as animals, and that the men have human faces. They're not. They're not. No, they're not. The women are basically just depicted as animals. So what does it mean? So it's a midrash on Revelation, and in a second I'm going to ask us to sort of look past the gendered thing into something that I think about that is very beautiful about this whole midrash. But what are the different things going on in the midrash from your perspective? Like, what's it saying about Revelation? Any ideas?
One thing is people seem to be very close to where it's happening.
Very close to one another. Yeah, they are.
So it's not like Moshe is like, he's all the way over there and we're kind of far out.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yes, it is interesting. So there is this vine which does separate them, right? So there's basically three groups of people. There's Moshe and Aaron, there's the men, and then there's the women. But it's true that it's not like he's shrouded. He's not like he's covered in clouds. He's right there. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Any other thoughts? I think he's getting it. He's maybe bringing down the Torah. He's on some level, it's an illustration of a Torah service. I mean, Moshe's bringing down the Torah. He is facing away from the people. All of the people are looking up at the Torah. But not the women. The women are looking up at the aleph. So I'll share a little bit about some of what that symbolism probably means. So the aleph in the Jewish imagination is certainly the most profound of all the letters. And there's a midrash about how the only thing that was actually heard at Revelation was the sound of the aleph. And what's the sound the aleph makes? No sound. And so everyone, I want you to do this with me. Okay, do the silent scream, because there's a midrash about what this is. So one. Right, that's, according to the midrash, that's the deepest and most profound form of revelation, is this silent, wordless, direct, unmediated God's voice, which is actually just right? And what the Midrash is saying, and I think this has been a very problematic statement through a lot of Jewish history. What the Midrash seems to be saying is that the women actually, the men, have access to mediated revelation through Moshe and through the Torah and through Aharon. Right? The men's experience of God is very highly mediated. The women's experience of God is direct. The women's experience of God is direct. Like a bird or like an animal. And so there's a couple of things about this. The first thing about it is this idea that women are somehow closer to God has been used throughout much of Jewish history as an excuse for excluding women from the main action of religious life. Right? Women don't need to be in the minyan because they're closer. Women don't need to pray because they're closer. And which is hugely problematic, both because, for the obvious reason that, we think women should be included in all aspects of religious life, but also because, in my experience, women and men have about equal spiritual capacities. Right? I'm not, I know some women who are really deeply spiritual, some men who are, right, and some who are not, right? I think men and women have roughly equal spiritual capacities. So I think it thinks about revelation in an engendered way, which I think is somewhat problematic, to say the least. But this notion that the natural world or the animal world somehow has a more direct and immediate attachment to, experience of divine reality is something that actually I think is quite profound. And there's another famous midrash about Parshat Bamidbar, which is we read this week, always right before Shavuot. We always read Parshat Bamidbar right before Shavuot. And the midrash says, "Ein adam koneh Torah ad sheyaseh atzmo kehefker kamidbar." A person cannot acquire Torah unless they make themselves like the abandoned wilderness. It's this beautiful idea, right? Hefker is this halachic concept that it's something that's ownerless and it's out in the field and it's free for all to take. And the Midrash transforms this halachic idea into this thing we're supposed to cultivate a wilderness-like state of being. A kind of darkness and abandonment of the self in the context of which divine light can shine through. And I think this is a beautiful idea and also a mysterious one. And I'll offer one answer, but I'm curious about your answers. It's not my answer. The answer is from Menachem Mendel Vitebsk, who's a 18th century Hasidic Rebbe. But how do we do this? Like, how do we make ourselves open to the kinds of revelations that we believe, we hope, exist in the world? In the context of prayer. Yeah, beautiful, right? So, sorry for folks online. I can't repeat everything David said, but one of the things he said was that prayer is an opportunity to open ourselves and think of ourselves as a vessel for receiving revelation, which I think is very true. Other thoughts about where we,
Is it some, I don't know, ironically or sadly,
badly, or something. But sometimes when things are really bad, like when life lays us low, is when we seem to be most open to um, that being out there and reaching for
Right.
whatever's out there in the wilderness.
Right, in dark moments. I think that can be true. I think that definitely can be true. I think it can also be true that, dark, we can become so eroded and debased by, there's a statement, an important statement in the Mishnah, Ein Kemach, Ein Torah, where there's no bread, there's no Torah. The idea being if someone is starving, they can't access all of the, right? The first, right? But I do think that's true, right? So there's so moments of personal darkness and personal wilderness can actually open out onto vistas of divine reality. Any other ideas or personal examples even of times they've experienced revelation? I always tell people I saw this tree once. And it's true. There's this one tree, I still remember it. It was outside my house on the Upper West Side. And one morning, there was something about this tree.
We had a prayer class last summer at the spring seminar, and a number of the people attendees were mentioning that when they were out in nature was where they found a lot of connection.
Right. I mean, I think there's wisdom in that. And I think, I'll share one more thing, and I'll share one answer, and then we'll move on. But I think that there are a lot of ways in which. So here's what I want to do. Everyone knows I'm going to Israel. Well, some people know I'm going to Israel in a few weeks. One of the things I want to do that, because I have small children, I don't know that I'm going to be able to actually do, is in Mitzpeh Ramon, which is in the Negev. There's one of these World Heritage dark sky sites where you can look up and see 40,000 stars with naked eye, right? Which I've never seen. I'm a very urban person, and I have never really seen a clear dark night sky in my whole life. And so remember, God tells Avram right at the beginning, look up and count the stars, and so shall be your children. And the experience the experience Avram would have had for that, and the association that most of our ancestors before the Industrial Revolution would have had with what that meant was something infinitely more magnificent, I think, than what I'm accustomed to seeing when I look up and see the stars. Right? I've never, right? And I think there's a lot of kinds of religious experience which are described in our sources and by our ancestors, which after industrialization we are sort of abstracted from. And I just wonder about that. I don't have a thing to say about that other than something I wonder about. But then, so Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk offers an answer. So how we make ourselves hefker coming bar, how do we actually make ourselves like the wilderness? And he says, the Torah only stands firm in one who makes himself like the midbar before those who are poor of mind and who are rich of mind. And he doesn't think of himself as better than his friend. On the contrary, he should be completely hefker before his friend. And through this, they become united and bound up with one another. And I think this is really important and really beautiful because as Jews, right, it's never simply about receiving revelation as individual peoples, like in this sort of in the wilds of ourselves. It's not just about an inward experience. Always our experience of revelation is directed outwards towards people around us, at least says Menachem Mendel. These people who we stand in profound relationship with and obligation to. And we are here to serve them, just as our animals are here to serve us. Right? The Torah and the Midrash and the image, right, the image that we're looking at, sort of understands this movement towards the wild, I think, not as this like atavistic return to like a primitive place. Like that's not what it's about, but as a chance to embrace a higher destiny and a higher mission. And it's not a devolution into an animal state, but it's actually an evolution into a deeper state of connectedness and a more direct experience of divinity. And, you know, it's a little heady, it's a little theological, but it is Shavuot. And God willing, we'll all experience some more of that over the coming days. And with that, we will continue with Mariv. Does anyone want to lead Mariv for us? Sure? Yeah. All right. I will lead Mariv. Mariv is on page 28. Oh, I'm sorry, no. Yeah, you're right. 28 or 64. Please rise. Baruch hu et Adonai Amivorach. Baruch Adonai Amivorach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai Amivorach. You'll be seated. Umavio yom umevi laila, umavio ben yom ben laila, Adonai tzivot shemo el chai v'kayam, tamin l'chaleinu leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai amari v'aravim, ahavat olam beit Yisrael. Ve'avatecha al tasir mimenu leolamim, Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohechem Emet. 32 or 70. You guys repeat after me. Michamocha Ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha Nedar ba'kodesh Nora tehilot O sefele Malechutecha Rahuvanecha Bokei Ayam Livnei Moshe uMiriam Zeli Anu ve'amiru Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Ay, 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 chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu, Ushmor Tzeitenu, Boenu, Lechaim Shalom Eta B'Yad Olam, Ufros Aleinu Sugat Shalom Echa, Baruch atah Adonai, Abore, Sugat Shalom Aleinu, V'Al Yisrael, Ve'al Yerushalayim, 3474, Ve'shameru B'nei Yisrael, Et HaShabbat, La'asod Et HaShabbat, Ledorotam Berit Olam, Hai, 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 Beini, Uvein B'nei Yisrael, Oti Le'olam, Ki Sheshet Yamim Asa Adonai Et HaShamayim V'et ha'aretz Uvayom ha'shevi'i Shabbat v'yinachash Yitgada v'yigada Shemei Rabah Ve'amad Yivrakir Ve'amlich Malchutei B'chayechonu Yomechonu B'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala Bagala Ubizman Karev Imru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam U'La'olamei Almaya Yibarach V'Yishtabach Yibarach Minaseh Midado V'Yitale V'Yitala Shmei D'Kudsha B'Richu Le'la Mikol B'Chata V'Shirada Tush B'Chata V'Nechemata Damiran B'Alma V'Imru Amen. The silent Amidah is on page 35 or 76. Page 47 or 89. Vayechulu hashamayim ve'aretz v'chol tzivam Vaychal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa Vayishbot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa Vayvarech Elohim et yom hashivi Vaykadesh oto Ki hivo Shabbat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim lasot Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah El HaGadol HaGibor VeNorah El Elyon Gomer Kone Shamayim V'Haaretz Magen Avod B'Idbaro Mechayim Eitim B'Mamaro Hayel HaKadosh Ha'en Kamo Haminiach Le'amo B'Yom Shabbat Kodsho Ki Bam Ratzah Laniach Lahem לפניו נבוא וירא בפחד ונודה לשמו בכל יום תמיד מעין הברכות אל ההודעות אדון השלום מקדש השבת ומברך שביעי ומניח בקדושה לעמד ושני עונג זכר למעשה בראשית אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו רצה במנוחתנו קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך ותר ליבנו לעבדך באמת והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך וינוחו וישראל מקדשי שמך ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת יקרא ויקרא שמי רבה בעמד יברא קירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכנו ומכנו וחייך בישראל בהגלה זמן קרב אמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמי יברך ויתברך וידוע ונעם ונעשה וידע ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה במקום ברכתיה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דברה בעלמה ואמרו אמן תקבל סדום ובדון דכל ישראל קדם משמעיה ואמרו אמן יהי שלום ושמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום ואמרו מה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו amen. Does someone make Kiddush for us? B'bakasha, Mark.
Vaymanan Rabbatai, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Borei Pri Hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Asher Kedesham b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, V'shabbat kadsho b'yava u'vratzon hichilanu, Zikaron l'maaseh bereishit, Kihu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh, Zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, Banu acharta yotanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shavat kosheka v'avratzon yikotanu Baruch ata Adonai mikadesh hashabat.
Amen. We continue with Sfirat HaOmer on page 55. For those of you who may have lost count, yesterday was 48 days of the Omer. Hineni muchan umzuman l'kayim mitzvat aseh shel Sfirat HaOmer kemo shekatuv b'Torah usfartem lachem mimocharat HaShabbat miyom aviachem et Omer tzufa sheva Shabbatot timimot tiena ad mimocharat HaShabbat hashvi tisperu 50 yom. I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. As it is ordained in the Torah, you shall count from the eve of the second day of Pesach, when an Omer of grain is to be brought as an offering. 7 complete weeks. The day after the 7th week of your counting will make 50 days. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu Mitzvotav V'tzivanu Al Sfirat HaOmer. Page 59 at the bottom. Hayom Tisha Ve'arba'im Yom Shehem Shiva Shavuot LaOmer. That is 49 days, 7 weeks of the Omer. Aleinu is on page 51. Aleinu l'shabech Adonai kol or 98. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו Kaddish is page 52 or 101. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'gala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shelama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. It is my pleasure to invite up just a few more times in this role our president, Dr. David Haft.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
And it's always nice to see everyone here. First off, the Kiddush sponsor for tomorrow is Doris Pat Smith, and that's in memory of her husband, Ted Smith. Shavuot is coming, and that is tomorrow night, Saturday night, from 8:30 to 11:30, and we will study. We have a morning service on Sunday, that's the 5th, and on Monday. We get 2 days of Shavuot.
Party on.
And it begins at 9:30,
Yisker's on Monday.
and Megillah Ruth. And we have the gala coming, that's on June 12th. The dinners will be at 5:30 p.m. in congregants' homes, and then at 7:30 we'll all come together here for some entertainment and dessert, and a good time should be had. I'm only sorry I can't make it, but it's for a good cause, and it's to recognize Mariut's contributions. And Tikkun Olam, Hearts and Homes, which is for refugees. We still have Afghan refugees, families. There's 3 families being resettled. No, 2 families being resettled in New Rochelle. Mike Dvorkin is asking for more volunteers, and if you speak to him, he can sort of tell you what's involved. Mostly it's sort of helping these people get oriented. And also Dan Perkis is running a program talking about music. And this coming one, these are the Westchester community. These are not here, though. These are 2 classes, the WCC, that's the Westchester Community Center?
Yes, Westchester Community
College, okay? And that's June 8th and the 15th, and we'll get more announcements of that. And the title of this program he's running is Think Like a Composer. Anyone else have anything they want to announce to the community? Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful Shabbat dinner. Good night.
Shabbat shalom. Yigdal, it's 53 or 114. Yigdal Elohim Chai Yishtabach Nimtza Ve'ein El Mitziyuto Echad Ve'im Yachid Yechudo Nelam Ve'gam Ein Sof Le'achduto Ein Lo Demut Haguf Ve'ein No Guv Lo Na'aroch Elav Kedushato Kadmon Lechol Davar Asher Nivra Rishon Ve'ein Reishit LeReishito Hino Adon Olam Bechol No Tzar Yoreh Gedulato Malchuto Shefa Nevuato Netano El Anshe Segulato Betifarto Lokam B'Yisrael Gemosheo Navi Umamid Et Emunato Torah Temenatan Le'amoel Ya Nevionem Anbeito Lo Ya Khalifa Hel Velo Ya Mirdato Le'olamim Le'zulato Sofe B'Yodea Setareinu Amabi L'Sof Davar Be'kadmato Gomer Le'ish Chesed Gemifalo Noten L'Rasha Ragen Rishato Yishlach L'Ketz Yamit Meshichenu Midon mechake et Yeshuato, he mitim yechayel berov chasto, Baruch adei ad shem dilato, mitim yechayel berov chasto, Baruch adei ad shem dilato. Good Shabbos, everyone.